Yakuza 3, my beloved. Yakuza 3, my beloved. A game that I was told is the worst in the main series, but so far has become my second favorite. So I decided, why don't I make a video about it? There are plenty of videos talking about other Yakuza titles like Yakuza 0, Kiwami 1, Yakuza 7, which is the Like a Dragon one, and so forth. But I don't feel like 3 gets the same treatment, and I firmly believe it has tons of good game design and story elements. Also, I don't like the whole shtick where the game gets a bad reputation, but no one explores the criticism in detail, because then it feels like the game is being hated just because it is the expected thing to do. And if you want proof of my love, just look at my channel. For some reason, I decided to make a video on Yakuza 3, while not having covered any of the other previous titles. But I don't like numbers and math dictate what I should do, so I'll start from 3. Also, why would anyone complain? If you're watching this video, you probably already know about the other titles. And if you know nothing about this series but decided to click on a video about Yakuza 3, good, I like you. You don't let order and numbers control your life. Keep math out of your brain, it is better for your health and for your hair. This video will contain spoilers for Yakuza 3 and probably for Yakuza 0, 1 and 2, since I already played them and story-wise, well, they come before chronologically. But Yakuza 3 is my oldest game from the series, since 0, Kiwami 1 and 2 were released later, since 0 is a prequel and Kiwami 1 and 2 are remakes. Now, the Yakuza series is known for being a really good crime drama, so let's start covering the story and see if it lives to the same appraisal. Kiryu appears having a nice beach time and enjoying his time alongside Haruka and other children when a guy named Rikia is presented as an uncle and Aniki, two heavily intimate titles, but we haven't seen this character before. Rikia then proceeds to inform us that the boss has been shot, and we cut to Daigo Dojima, the 6th chairman of the Tojo clan. In this cutscene we see that Daigo is refusing a really good deal and is doing so to protect Kiryu, since Kiryu has done a lot for the Tojo clan in previous games. Then Daigo goes into a meeting and sees Shintaro Kazama, the patriarch of the Kazama family, who has raised Kiryu. That surprises Daigo but also the player, because Kazama has been dead since the events of Yakuza 1. Kazama then acts aggressively, demanding that Daigo accept the deal, showing he even has the deed to the land of Kiryu. This of course serves to further elevate our questions, since not only is he back from the dead but also chooses to act in a way that will harm Kiryu, a person that should be dear to him. Tensions escalate and we cut to a scene in a hospital, where Kiryu and Riki appear. We see a child, she hands over a drawing of Kazama and informs Kiryu that this is the man who shot her father. Then we are thrown right after the events where Yakuza 2 ends and the game starts. Let me just say that I wasn't expecting that, especially when one of the complaints about the game is the pacing. This introduction wastes no time hooking you up and raises many questions, making sure you won't stop playing, since at this point you want answers to everything shown. Now, let me just emphasize all the good elements in this first cutscene. First is Rikia, because we don't know him. We have to assume who he is by what is being presented. So when we see that he is dressed like a Yakuza, is addressed as Aniki by Kiryu, talks about a shared boss that he and Kiryu know, and we see Daigo right after, it makes us believe that he is a member of the Tojo clan. That's why he is dressed like a Yakuza, and that is his connection to Kiryu. Second is Daigo. Just as I said previously, the whole conversation with Rikia makes us believe that Daigo is the boss who has been shot. and we see that he is involved in a big thing that will affect Kiryu. And rather than acting in a way that would be beneficial to the clan, he acts in a way to protect Kiryu and leave him out of this Yakuza business. And this is sure to make him some enemies. Not only that, but because we are led to believe he has been shot, we also don't understand how he has a daughter, since we are not sure about how much time after Yakuza 2 these cutscenes are taking place. And third is Kazama, which I already went into details before. He is back from the dead and is willing to bite Kiryu's ass. And it feels like it's him, because since he has the deed of the land and is pressuring the Tojo clan to accept the deal, it feels like he is a person that still cares about the Yakuza and the Tojo. It feels like a person that has a connection to this deal and to the family future. And for a starting cutscene, holy shit. I don't know if any of the other games were able to make me interested so early on. Maybe Yakuza 0 was able to accomplish that, since the bomb dropped early, when the guy from who Kiryu collected money died. And we know it wasn't him, since both the player and Kiryu saw him alive, so he raises a question and then the game leads us on this series of solving a question but raising another. Yakuza 3 does the same, and before 0. Now, we solve the deal with the boss and Rikia, since we uncover that it is a different family that took a liking to Kiryu. But we discover that yes, both the boss and Daigo have been shot, only 2 hours apart, and both were shot by Kazama? How? So as you can see, it will give you an answer, and just as you are left with your mouth open, they put the hook right in again. Now, I won't explain the entire story in detail, since if you haven't played Yakuza 3, what are you still doing watching this segment about the plot of the game? Go play the game, but leave this video open please. And if you have played Yakuza 3, I don't think I need to baby feed you the entire game. But I will be explaining a little bit more of the plot to give you enough context in what I'm criticizing, so don't be scared. Let's talk about Rikia and the Ryudo, who are our first enemies in the game and who soon become our best allies. An enemy to lovers trend if you want. To me, they are presented as Kiryu equals, people who are in the wrong business but with the right heart. And you can see that in their actions. All of the Ryudo family members have acted as a tough guy to protect someone. We see Mikio doing that for the orphanage, he protects them on multiple occasions, and he is a family member who doesn't possess the strength to do that, but he does it anyway. We also see that in Rikia, as he also wants to protect and avenge his family. He wants to help Kiryu, he protects a girl who has studied with him, and he also steps in to protect the orphanage, and more things I'll talk about later. Lastly, Nakahara, who also has a good heart, actually protects and helps the community he lives in, adopting Saki, taking to heart Kiryu's problems, and becoming sworn brothers with him. And he actually is equal to Kiryu in strength. I mean, we see him throw a bull, but it is an old man, and so his strength is disappearing. Not only that, but Rikia actually grows to have an actual friendship with Kiryu, which is fresh, and maybe is one of the first times the game delved that deep in making sure that occurs. I mean, Kiryu has other friends like Date, Daigo, Majima, and Yuya, but except for Majima, I don't think we get enough screen time to see an actual bond forming with other characters. It is more or less implicit rather than shown. And maybe, if you want to mention Nishikiyama, who was Kiryu's best friend, and we see a lot of him in Yakuza 0 and 1, the difference to me is pretty simple. In 0 and 1, the game shows us a lot of moments of them together where they already act in a friendly way, while in 3, we see a friendship from the beginning. In 0, they joke with each other, they share memories, they have recurring jokes, they have each other's back without needing to ask, and even in moments of need, they still keep a light humor. Almost as to show they have already gone through so much together, and they will pull through this one just like the other times. In 3, it's not like that. We see how Kiryu doesn't like Rikia at first, we then see how Kiryu tries to evade him, doesn't want to grow too close, doesn't like being called Aniki, doesn't want his help, and other things. Then we see they bond as Rikia disobeys Kiryu and follows him to Kamurocho, and they eat together and have some other missions, like Rikia protecting a girl and searching for a tattoo master to finish his tattoo. and even laughing as Rikia says that they will be kinda like brothers by having a tattoo from the same master. We then see him help deal with Kanda, and we see how Kiryu starts to stand in for the guy, being worried, I mean he is almost killed. Later we even see Kiryu relying on him, asking for his help protecting the orphanage while he's out. Rikia feels like a guy who could be Kiryu. He is a guy who sticks to his morals, wants to help others, will tough out a situation no matter the cost, and is hot-headed. He will act if he thinks it is the best, even against other people's wishes, just like we see Kiryu doing throughout most of the series. He could be a friend that walks the same path, but ultimately, we know that he will never be. Kiryu is a beast and Rikia is still just a human. We see him try to follow in the path of a hero, but ultimately, he never truly accomplishes anything, as he will always be in the shadow of Kiryu's action. Anything we see Rikia doing, Kiryu then does something more heroic with a higher stake. There is a feeling that if Rikia had the protection of being a protagonist, maybe he would be just like Kiryu. But in the end, he is not our protagonist. Maybe if it was another story. But in the end, he is immortalized as a hero and a dear friend. Both paths we saw him treading. At the end of the game, we see him trying to protect the orphanage. We see him being shot in the leg, and we see him following Kiryu despite his order. And this is well executed. Different from other occasions, this time he wanted to obey Kiryu. He didn't want to follow, but because Saki was following Kiryu, he couldn't stay put. He also had to go. Not because he wanted to avenge or help Kiryu, but to protect Saki. As this fight starts closing, everything feels fine, but then the enemy is still alive. He aims for Kiryu and shoots. Rikia is shot through the chest, dying moments later. His last action was a heroic sacrifice, an action that now outshines Kiryu. Since our protagonist can never die, this is the only action he will never be able to accomplish. Rikia takes a step that Kiryu will never be given the privilege of. We see Kiryu breaks into a hysterical cry, while they say their goodbyes. Rikia is a hero, but not because he's able to do things like a hero, but rather because despite knowing and being shown he is not the hero of the story, he never gives up on trying to be one. This to me maybe is the emotional peak in the story. The game puts in the effort to bound us with the character and sends him off in a way that makes the most sense, giving him the biggest achievement.
Rikia. おいリキアおいお前何勝手に死んでんだよおい俺許さねえぞおいリキア返事をしろリキア
Not only that, but this moment comes as a surprise. Just some scenes before, we saw Mikio, another friend protecting the orphanage and acting as a hero, despite not having the ability to. He took a hammer to the head and survived. But there was a tension that he could die. So this creates a false sense of security. If anything, they could have killed this minor character and not the best boy. Or maybe Nakahara would be the one to die since he is old, he got his heroic last stand, he got to listen to the voice of his daughter, and so on. But no, Rikia is the one who dies. And that was a little bit unexpected, especially since this was obviously not going to be the last fight in the game, so it didn't feel like everything would come crashing down. Okay, allow me now to complain about a guy that I don't feel like got enough respect from the game, the opposite of Rikia, which was Kashiwagi. Kashiwagi is a recurring character in the Yakuza series, and serves as a friend and mentor to Kiryu. He is basically Kazama Shintaro, but with more presence in the games, while Kazama has more presence in Kiryu's past and growth. He has helped Kiryu a lot and is one of the few guys Kiryu can 100% trust. Now, he did contribute a lot to Yakuza 3 plot since he's being shown acting as captain to Daigo and being pretty helpful and respectful to him. He also has the brains and he can investigate and catch the trail of a traitor in the Tojo clan. And just as he presents this information to Kiryu, he is shot dead at his own office by a helicopter with a minigun. We are giving a little time with him both before and after his death. We are giving no time to mourn his death correctly, and like, I get it, in life we will not be able to mourn every death. Sometimes we need to take action, we can't be sad. But my problem just arises with the little time we have to bond with him until he dies, especially when I feel like he could have been given the time. Take for example Date-san. Date-san appears after Kashiwagi's death, to serve as a substitute brain for the operation. My problem is, we don't really bond with Date in this game. There is little emotional exchange between him and Kiryu, and he also goes nowhere. He appears, helps with the plot, and then disappears, as he is not needed anymore. Not only that, but come on, didn't we have enough of him in Yakuza 1 and 2? Give it a break and allow for another character to shine a little bit more. And to me, that could have been Kashiwagi. If you allowed Kiryu and Kashiwagi to meet, make them work together to uncover the beginning of the traitor plot, it would have been better. I mean, Daigo is already shot and we are searching for a traitor, and Kanda has declared war against Kashiwagi and Kiryu. Allow Kashiwagi and Kiryu to bond, investigate, and fight against Kanda, and after that, kill him. That would make us question even more, and from there you could just do the plot normally. Make Kiryu go to the purgatory and fight Majima, uncover about Hamazaki and the Chinese mafia, and so forth. I don't like Kashiwagi's death just because it feels so obvious that they could have done more with the character in Yakuza 3 if they cut unnecessary characters. He could have been given a last bit of friendship, respect and heroic action before getting turned into fucking Swiss cheese. On a similar note, I don't like Tamashiro's reappearance and Hamazaki for the same reason. I get it that Tamashiro reappears as an enemy to Nakahara, since at the beginning of the game he captured Saki, but man, I feel like his arc was done. But you know who didn't have his arc done? Hamazaki. What did he do in the plot? Well, he blackmails Majima and then allows the Chinese triads to attack Kamurocho, and that's it. He doesn't take part in the attack, rather than fighting him we fight Lao Kalong again, which is fine. I like his fight and there is enough context for him and the Chinese mafia to appear. What I don't like is that Hamazaki disappears. I get it that the Chinese mafia takes him for the failure of the attack in Kamurocho, but I don't know. I feel like if Mine is going to contract Tamashiro, why doesn't he contract Hamazaki? I feel like they could have rewritten that into the plot. I mean, Hamazaki would have a reason to accept. If we look into the end cutscene, he appears out of nowhere, complains that he is basically dead and already lost his life and attacks Kiryu. Well, Mine could buy him from the Chinese mafia. I bet they would like money to rebuild rather than keep torturing this guy, and Hamazaki would be allowed to get revenge on Kiryu. I feel like things would play the same but with a better closure to Hamazaki, and would make him a boss. I mean, as the player, we are never presented anything substantial about this guy. How am I supposed to believe that he has fucking Mad Dog Majima on the leash if you don't put the effort to justify his dominance? I mean, Majima could beat the guy in a fight as far as I know and get rid of the blackmailing evidence. And lastly, I like Mine. He is strong and we are introduced to that, as we see him training and later dealing with Kanda easily. He also has a body similar to Kiryu. He is cunning and we see that by the success he has. He keeps the trend of villains that are fucked up in the head but have a faint glimmer of sense. I mean, he was loyal to Daigo and wished his best. If anything, he makes too much sense, even his insanity. He had grown up in a bad situation and never saw true friendship and trust. He had the brains and acquired money, both things that allowed him to see how easy it is to manipulate others. All he had to do was sweet talk or pay, and people would want to be his friend or underling. Then, the only person he had grown to respect gets shot. The man who he had just met and had so much respect for is now a husk of a person. He wanted to kill Daigo because he pitied him. For Mine, life was just about power, and the only person whose powers he respected had lost it all. Imagine becoming best friends with someone and then basically watching him die soon after. That breaks a man, especially one who is already unstable. Also, you can kinda see a little bit of envy for Kiryu. Daigo had a lot of respect for Kiryu, and in a way, it was his respect for him that got him shot. All because he didn't want to give Kiryu's land. So to Mine, Kiryu was a problem to Daigo, and not only that, he was occupying a place in Daigo's heart that he felt was his. I like it, a cunning but insane man, in a way moved by a warped sense of love, power and admiration, and with enough envy to kill Kiryu. What I don't like is the trend of giving the last boss a heroic sacrifice. Nishikiyama, Golda and now Mine all are enemies to heroic sacrifices. After Nishikiyama is defeated by Kiryu, Jingu reappears and Nishikiyama gets shot multiple times running towards Jingu and killing him, then shoots the bomb in a last sacrifice. Gonda is the same. After being defeated by Kiryu, he gets the most badass exchange of shots after another enemy tries to get the best of Kiryu in a cowardly way. And Mine is defeated by Kiryu. Then Richardson reappears, Mine exchanges shots with him to protect Kiryu, then kills himself in a heroic sacrifice. Man, this friend is getting kind of old and predictable. Not bad, I just feel like they can do something better. I would have liked if Mine stayed alive. After all, his confrontation with Kiryu had put some sense in his mind, and just as I said before, he was loyal to Daigo and to the Tojo. He just needed someone to straighten out his warped ideas. He would have been a great captain and substitute to Kashiwagi, having the brains and muscle to do that, and would be able to do what Kiryu asked Majima at the beginning, to be a strong person at Daigo's side, to crush anyone who thinks the Tojo is weak under his leadership. But overall, a 9 out of 10 villain. Had he not gotten the classic cliché, I would have loved him and would maybe have taken the throne from Golda. Okay, but after all this, is the story of Yakuza 3 bad and with a horrible pacing like most people complain? Not really, I don't think so, but I can understand where that point of view comes from. The pacing is slower because we get to see Kiryu happy, we get to see the calm before the storm, and we get to use that time to develop new characters and form bonds. The game uses a lot of time with the children in the orphanage, which is a less action-oriented plot, but relevant all the same. We get to see Kiryu acting like a father figure, just like Kazama was to him. We get to see Kiryu intervene and talk with the children, lecturing them, helping them, and bonding with them. To me, that gives us a sense of importance when the land is in danger. We know now how much of a dream this place is for Kiryu, and we feel more compelled to stop it from happening. That is also true for the other guys. It makes sense for Mikio and Rikia to protect the orphanage, as they also get to see this side, just like the player. It feels like everyone gets to be on the same page about why everything is so important. I feel like the story of Yakuza 3 is much more human than in the other games, similar to the human bond we see with Makoto and Majima in Zero, and I fucking love that. It is not an epic crime drama, it is a story of humans protecting what is dear to them, independent of who is coming at them. I feel like you could rewrite the beginning so we spend more time with the crime drama part, but then Rikia, Nakahara, Mikio and the children would all lose the weight and depth they have, and by that also Kiryu, since the weight of them is being carried in Kiryu's shoulders. If they don't have weight, it feels like Kiryu is just going because he has to, because he is the protagonist, rather than in an organic way. I love the story, it contains my favorite allies, and I feel like it is second only to Yakuza 0. Now, let's break away from absolute cinema and talk about combat, about action, about gameplay. After all, it is still a game. Yakuza 3 it is also my second favorite combat, for two main reasons. One is your ability to acquire more skills, and second is the wide range of abilities you get. One important pillar a game has to have is, can it encourage players to do content that is not core to the game, but is fun and different? If yes, you have a really good platform to do a lot of fun and wacky game mechanics while not forcing it on the player and derailing the main content of the game. If I can give you a good example, it is the money in Yakuza 0. Money is used to unlock everything in the skill tree, but since you can acquire money by doing anything, from gambling to minigames to Coliseum tournaments, you get incentivized to do side content, as it will give you money and unlock cool new skills for you to use in the main core of the game, the beat 'em up part. Yakuza 3 does the same, and that was much of a joy, as it has some creative ideas. You can unlock new skills with experience, and just like any other game, you acquire that from doing almost anything in the game. Side missions, coliseums, random fights, eating food, etc. But the way the game makes things more interesting is not by having only one source of skills. Yes, you have the skill tree that you unlock by leveling, but you also have your revelation skill tree, your weapons skill tree, your dragon skill tree, and your boss skill tree. So let's talk about them. Revelation is a fun mechanic where you get hints of crazy things happening around Kamurocho and Okinawa. You go there and look around for something that looks out of place. You look at it, a funny cutscene plays, and you get to write a phrase about it. If you select the right phrase, you get a new ability. Overall, a big fan of this. Not only does it allow you to break away from the serious tone of other elements, but you also get to take a break from fighting and focus more on taking in the world and seeing it alive. It also works well in making a skill be remembered in your gigantic toolset of skills, since now you have a little memory in the theme of a certain hit action, making you easily remember in what situations it can be used. For example, there is one hit action that you perform if you are surrounded by multiple enemies and you are running. I will always remember how to do it, since the way it was unlocked was seeing a woman fly around delivering pamphlets to a crowd of people like some crazy Naruto move. All of them are so unique, and some of them caught me by so surprise that I recommend not spoiling the fun for yourself and experiencing it firsthand by playing it. Also, seeing the ideas Kiryu has and then reading his silly little blog post makes it so funny to me, like my boy here is discovering new fight moves while doing his YouTuber hobby. Still, on the fun side of content, another one that helps you unlock skills is the EF7, which not only I believe to be a reference to VR and Back to the Future, but also allows you to replay previous boss fights with some twists. Is as if you were fighting them in an actual video game boss, but in this virtual reality for Kiryu. The cool thing is that this allowed the developers to have some fun and not only do some difficult fights, but also implement funny gimmicks, allowing for a fresh feeling when fighting bosses again. It's cool, especially since you can't use healing items, so it makes you fight them in a much more strategized way, and after completing this difficult task, you will also be rewarded with a new skill for Kiryu. Again, just that little bit of seasoning makes you want a bite from each side content they put effort into developing. The other two training formats are a little bit more classic. One of them is the return of our beloved Komaki, teaching us some old skills and new ones, like our good old Tiger Drop. I will take this opportunity to talk about the other two counters they added other than the Tiger, since it filled such a nice spot in Kiryu's arsenal. Tiger Drop is a really powerful counter, but you normally need to be a little bit more precise to execute it. But these two other counters are way easier to execute, allowing for more anxious players like myself, who tend to react too early, to still have a way to keep combat flowing and reactive. I use the Komaki parry all of the time, And you might have seen it already in the background footage from even before I was talking about the skills. That's how much I enjoyed it using it in my normal fights. Though I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, the Tiger Drop is still the best. The second training format that is more rigid is weapon training, which, yeah, fair enough, you are only going to learn how to use a weapon either by using it or protecting yourself against it. Also, there are only 3 weapons to train, Nunchaku, Tonfa and Kali sticks, so I can understand how not much effort was put into this. But overall, such a great idea to break skills into different categories and put them in different content for you to unlock. Especially since I wasn't a big fan of the whole experience thing, and that's a nice way to talk about a complaint that I think fits way better in regards to combat, which is pacing. Remember when I told you people complained about Yakuza 3 pacing? If they are talking about the story, then I don't agree. But if people have actually been complaining about combat and just don't know how to explain, oh my god, I got you. Yakuza 3 had some of the best combat I experienced. Such a variety of skills, almost every ability was easy to access from your arsenal, the button inputs were fine, the requirements were easy, they were memorable, cool and unique, but why the fuck probably more than 50% of your skills are only unlocked after 3 or 4 main story bosses? Like, only around chapter 8 or 9 the game felt like it had given me a resemblance of a tool set of skills to use. But at this point, probably 60% of the game was already completed, especially for me since I like to do side quests as they appear rather than all at the end. This is a problem because you are always being taunted by your skill tree. You look at it, asking, demanding for your experience to unlock it, but most content outside of the main quest will not give you any meaningful experience gain. Side quests will give you some. If you do all of them available in a new chapter, you'll probably be allowed 1 or 2 level ups, but still, we are talking about maybe an hour or 2 of doing all side quests to like 2 new skills. Some of them will maybe only increase the damage of throw moves or your hit gauge. And when I say side quests are the only one, I mean it. Eating food, yeah, that tickles the experience bar. Random street fights, oh boy, I sure love fighting without having any skill unlocked and gaining another tickle to the experience bar. I swear, if the skills were spaced a little bit better, the game would be way more fun. Maybe put more of the training in earlier chapter rather than all of it once a specific chapter hits, especially not a later one. I swear, if you played Yakuza 3, please describe how you felt against the first boss, who is in theory supposed to be the weakest one, you know, since he is at the bottom of the Yakuza scheme. Go on, I'm waiting. And a thing that doesn't help with this feeling of slow pacing in combat is the fact that this game has horrendous enemy behavior, especially in regards to guarding. And I will be honest, even with a full skill set, this problem will still haunt you. One of the main problems with guarding is just that it is too strong in this game. Independent of how many attacks you throw and how many combo finishers you do, you will not break their guard or deal almost any damage through it. Not only that, but when you break it, it will take less than a second for them to be guarding again, allowing you only 1 hit at best. And even if you think you can play it smart, maybe by going around and hitting from the side of the back, nope, they will give you a 180 into you faster than you can blink. Their tracing is insane. Now, I don't think this is a problem in everything. For harder bosses or big encounters such as specific enemies in the Colosseum, I do believe it makes sense they don't allow for aimless span of attacks, and rather guard against most attack, making you approach them in a more strategized manner. My problem is, I don't want to be fucking planning a 5-step combo on a random street thug because he has blocked my 10th attack in a row. I think there should be places where the game allows you to just go crazy, try combos, try new moves, experiment with odd attacks you never tried before, or just go ape and destroy every enemy in the blink of an eye. And it feels like these opportunities were missing for most, if not all of the game. Most casual combat scenarios were still being dragged out for too long because enemies just refused to take damage. Seriously, I used to dredge when I saw a random encounter coming right at me because I knew it was going to be like 3 to 5 minutes of slop combat. Now, I know some people are going to say, it's not that bad, you only have to rely more on throw and parries and wait for more opportunities. But bro, in the beginning you don't even have parries, and your throws do almost no damage or have any flexibility at all, you just press the same button again and again. And yeah, I'm at your side. I like when games enforce the use of certain strategies, but when every little enemy requires me to rely on throwing to do damage, then you might as well delete my punches, since they are ineffective even against street enemies. I love this game combat towards the end, even if more difficult enemies appear. You now at least have different ways to string attacks and work your creativity when dealing with them. The variety starts flashing and you even forget this shitty enemy behavior, but I'm telling you, for most of the game it's going to be a staring competition while you wait for them to finally stop blocking, or you will be spamming throw all of the time. It feels like you are so closed in options since most of your attacks are just ineffective, that it just drains the fun out of you. It's like playing chess, but rather than using any special piece, you just have to spend 3 rows of pawns until the game finally gives you a single piece of horse or bishop. Probably a shogi reference would make sense since this is a Yakuza video, but I never learned how to play that shit. But still, once you have most of the things unlocked, pure gold and fun combat, you have way more options that feel like Yakuza 1 and 2 are put to shame. And bosses were really fun. They were difficult, but since you have such a big arsenal, you can find your preferred way to deal with them. And being forced more into the corner makes even a little bit of sense, since in Yakuza 3, Kiryu has been somewhat distant from this violent world. So you can say he has lost a little bit of his edge. And personally, that was a problem I had in other Yakuza games. Bosses are really important plot elements, but most of them are dealt with such ease in combat, you even question whether they were strong as the game was trying to impose by its plot elements. In Yakuza 3, it feels like gameplay is working in harmony with story elements, most of the time, to show you a powerful enemy that shines in its piece in the plot, but also shows to you why he gets to be a boss. I think what impresses me the most is the freedom you have while only having one style. When I look into Yakuza 0 and 1, I can understand why I enjoyed the combat. It was different styles, where each one of them had its themes and unlockables that shined in different circumstances. In Yakuza 3, we only have one style, which creates a problem for the player to identify which skill is more correct for each situation, but man, once you figured out where you should be using each skill, it flows so nicely. It's so good to feel like a machine that can deal with almost everything without having to rely on stance switching. And it makes you feel more like a master since you had to master each of these moves to understand their strength and weaknesses, rather than being led on by the game design and stance. And for a game that is 15 to 16 years old, I'm just impressed by how much they were able to be creative to the point where this game combat holds up even to this day. Okay, let's break away from the main game and talk about side quests, which to some people are the main reason they play the Yakuza franchise. I mean, most people know Yakuza as this goofy game with wild and crazy cutscenes that, even with context, feel like a fever dream, and that normally comes from the side quests. Yakuza is, in reality, a pretty serious game, with only some light-hearted humor here and there, but when playing the main questline, you will be watching a serious crime drama with real critics of political parties, laws, social demands, expectations, and hierarchy, and some philosophical questions in regards to a person's choice, morality, or dream. But most of the side quests are where the quest designers can work more freely and have fun. Now, as much as I enjoy the goofy side of Yakuza, I'm more of a complainer in regards to this. My main complaint is that the craziness for the sake of being wild, shocking, or funny can become quite repetitive. And when most, if not all, rewards from playing a side quest are just seeing funny gags, it can become quite exhaustive. Of course, this is more a matter of taste, but I do identify more with jokes that have an underlying message behind them, as it can be much more satisfying when you understand it. Now, Yakuza 3 goes for more meaningful sub-stories, while not forgetting to allow for fun to be the main drive of the situation. Let me give you some examples. One of my best examples is the Talking About Me sub-story, which revolves around the character Ayaka. Ayaka is a worker at a message parlor you can visit and play a minigame there. Normally, success will result in a recovery of health, and the minigame plays a joke around the fact it might not be a normal massage. After playing well enough, you will unlock a sub-story in a bar, where you will get to chat with her, almost feeling like a date with you too, where she will need help confessing to the man she loves, and the way she describes it, well, it almost feels like she's talking about Kiryu, that he's the one she loves. Even Yuya shows up and is hyping up the situation, saying that it looks like Kiryu is on a date and that she looks totally in love, making him even more inside his head and getting anxious about the fact that he is the one she loves. This entire situation is already funny enough, seeing our anxious boy believe he's getting confessed and getting nervous about how to react. But things get a little bit more complicated and a little less funny. Ayaka confesses that she was born a man, and goes on to talk about the difficulty trans people have to endure through their lives. She touches on the idea of not feeling like yourself for most of your life growing up. She talks about gender disorder and how it's a bad description of trans identity, labeling as a disorder when most trans people actually feel at peace when they finally accept their new identity and transition. The game even makes it reasonable, as Kiryu, a man who hasn't kept in touch with almost anything that is not related to the Yakuza world, and is a man who lived 10 to 20 years in jail, tries to ask some questions that most people would have come in contact with this for the first time. One of the subjects they touch upon is if it is the same as being gay, since some people have the idea that trans women are just gay men who uses the image of a woman to more easily attract men. He asks politely and she educates him in the same manner, explaining how one is more related to your sexuality while the other is about not identifying with the gender you were assigned at birth. He even is understanding of her, trying to re-explain in his own words what she just taught him, to ensure she understands that she is being seen and listened to. Especially since she is a person going through lots of pressure. She even got gender-affirming surgery, and, in her own words, is now a woman through and through. But even after that, she still suffers from insecurity, since independent of what she goes through to be seen as a woman, some people will always see her as a man, and she fears that this past of her will haunt her forever. That once the man she loves discovers she was once a man, he will not love her anymore or even get angry. In her own words, she is so in love but is so scared of being loved. Kiryu stays supportive of her, explaining how love is about accepting others for whom they are, and that it will not be easy to find someone who will do that, but that eventually someone is going to surpass that obstacle with her. And if this guy she's talking about doesn't accept her, he simply wasn't the right guy for her. Then, she proceeds to say the name of the guy she loves, which is Kentaro, which takes Kiryu by surprise. After she leaves having her spirits raised by Kiryu, we see him talk to Yuya, both of them being let down by the fact Kiryu isn't the guy she was in love with. I think what impresses me the most with this ending is where, after being told she used to be a man, Yuya even mentions that if a girl came to him and confessed about this, he would still seriously consider liking her back. And when he says that it was too bad for Kiryu, even Kiryu shows somewhat of a regret and pain by not being the guy she was in love with. Literally, what a perfect sub-story. We have a fun side with the whole ordeal where Kiryu believes he's the one, but we are also presented with a side for real human emotions. We get a serious depiction of a trans person not shying away from explaining their struggles, and most impressively, not shying away from showing two male characters, one of them even being the main character, to be somewhat attracted to that person and seriously consider their attraction to them. My boy Kiryu is more progressive than most men I know by being able to see trans women as just women, nothing differently, and just as deserving of love from straight men. I mean, it is questionable whether Kiryu is actually straight, but I think canonically he is. Now, may I also remind you that this is a Japanese game from 2009, a game from one of the most conservative countries, from a period where this discourse wasn't even common on the internet, and where most multimedia business such as Sega would be scared to present in their games. And how impressive is that this character is modeled and voiced by none other than model Ayana Tsubaki, a real-life trans woman model. Just goes to show how much they actually cared about portraying and representing these people and their fights. And this is why I love Yakuza, and is something I felt missing from Yakuza 1 and 2. Sub-stories are an opportunity for us to have fun, while not shying away from touching these difficult subjects. All these sub-stories are opportunities for both us and Kiryu to grow as a person, being presented with these situations and learning from them, becoming a more supportive person and being more understanding. I still remember the countless sub-stories that made me fall in love with this franchise in Yakuza 0. There was this sub-story about a doll girl who didn't have many people to spend time with, and who ended up spending time with Majima, where the players constantly bother to get dolls from the claw machine. She even starts calling you dad, it's all fun. Being bothered by a child and she misinterpreting you as her dad, but eventually things get serious, as a debt collector comes and kidnaps her mother. We get into a combat encounter to grind our gears and beat them up, and we get a pretty wholesome talk with the mother and the girl, where she says that she is sorry for the state of the doll Majima gave her, but that he is not mad, he is proud of her, that the doll looks pretty happy even after all the damage he suffered. The doll is still being clutched tight in her arms. And look, Majima is also pretty damaged, he got one eye missing. And so many more I could explain, but that would take so long, so let's try to be brief about some descriptions that I have from memory. There is one where Majima pretends to be someone's boyfriend, which touches on the subject of family expectations and fear, but the father is so wholesome about the situation. There is one about a boy who is being used by a girl he likes, while she is only using him for errands, and touches on the subject of self-worth and what doing something for love means. There is one about taxes that explains how the government raises taxes bit by bit, not to alarm and create a public revolt, and so on. I think you get the point. Yakuza sub-stories works best when there are funny gags that touch on more serious aspects. The best part is that when we have these more humane sub-stories, we also see the depth of Kiryu's personality, working for us to bond and relate better with the character. And I'm happy to see that this formula reappears in most of Yakuza 3 sub-stories. Not only by the aforementioned Ayaka example, but also by examples such as one where a promising mangaka wants to give all up in the name of following family traditions and becoming a medic. Multiple quests depicting the difficulties of living in a more countryside town against a urban one, such as Okinawa against Tokyo. One about the struggles of old people where they have to buy new technology, such as internet providers at the time, and how susceptible they are to scams. The struggles some people have learning English, and so on. Now, not all quests need to be that deep. They just need to be non-conventional and explore concepts we are naturally interested in. Some examples are the questline to solve a murder case, another one where we investigate multiple supernatural occurrences, some involving the idea of ghosts, curses, one about a fortune teller, and so on. And some can just be fun little things to bond character, such as playing hide and seek with the kids. I think Yakuza 3 strives for a good balance of sub-stories. Not only are they released bit by bit with each new mainline chapter, but they also tend to differ from the subject each sub-story is going to touch upon. I think everyone who played this game know that when the soundtrack starts playing, you better get ready for some feels. I think games that makes us smile are plenty, so having a game that is going to allow for a more complex arrangement of emotions to be felt is bound to leave a more lasting impression, as it becomes rooted in more areas of our memory. Now, let's wrap this video up. I'm trying to not pass the 15-page mark, as I know I will not finish recording and editing if it becomes too much of a task. And as much as I could talk more about the game, sometimes it's better to not spoil all the surprises. I believe that if you play this game, you are going to have a blast through most of it. It saddens me to say that you will probably have to endure the slower and boring beginning, at least gameplay-wise, to reap the rewards when that late game feeling finally hits you and you start comboing things together. But I hope I have shown enough of the emotional side that the main and side story possesses, and that even with this weight, they still find time to offer you funny gags and moments. So if you have the opportunity, please buy the game and enjoy it. As always, thank you for watching so far. I'm impressed you stuck through all of it, since the duration of this video is a little bit on the longer side. So I'm actually blushing right now that someone would pay that much attention to me. Here, have a kiss. Mwah. If you want to support the channel, let me remind you to subscribe, as that number always motivates me to create more content. And if you have the opportunity, I also have a Patreon, where I normally post some updates, do some bonus content, and ask for some opinions, and so on. And since dollars are really good when converted into the currency of my country, even if you can only support by subscribing with the cheapest option, just know that those $2 actually make a difference in my bills. So thanks for taking the trust in me. I normally try to maintain a monthly schedule in my releases, and that money helps me achieve it. Well, goodbye and stay tuned, as my next video will again be for my totally different game genre, this time about a platformer that I love. Also, I haven't forgotten about the Season 1 video about World of Warcraft. I just think it makes more sense to create that video once Season 2 is close to being released, so I'll keep you guys updated on Patreon. Anyway, goodbye!